Well, as we're sitting here at LTV on this, I should say, precious morning, uh, somewhat overcast and raining on Tuesday morning, May 2nd, year 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show. My name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access. And I'm just going to do this. And the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air since 1980. Of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Ann, and a huge group of followers that make it your business one way or the other, whether you know it or not, to enhance and fortify and widen the concept of public access. As it is self-explanatory and, yielding itself into the immediate vicinity of each one of us doesn't require from us to think too deep about what it really means and how it can be used and how we can benefit from it and what it is that we can utilize and use in order to find ourselves ahead. Being an artist myself, it's all about finding myself ahead. Otherwise, the paint dries, the battery is running out, it's getting cold and you need to turn the heat up, things like that. So it yields itself to us. By doing so, we find ourselves enjoying privileged reality. But, of course, privileged or otherwise, it's all about the immediate action that takes us to the forefront, and from there the route is pretty kind of clear by way of being self-explanatory. I had a few interesting interactions with friends of mine that I value and respect a great deal. But before that, let me mention that actually this coming weekend here at LTV, there's going to be a weekend show by the Artists Alliance of the East End. So they're putting together a show at Studio 3 and the hallways of LTV. And I think the opening is, if I'm not mistaken, it's this coming Saturday, which will be the 6th, I think. The 6th, the 7th, yeah. So it's going to be on view from Friday, Friday, May 5th through Sunday, May 7th, I think, something like that. But this coming weekend, a worthwhile show to examine and so you're all welcome. Also coming up May 13th, an opening of another group art show here at LTV titled A Grain of Thought. Participants are David Slater, Michael McDowell, Jonathan Morse, Chris LeCoeur, Steve Ram, and your humble servant, myself, Haim Mizrahi. So that is going to be on view from May 10th through June 10th. The opening will be, as I have mentioned, Saturday, May 13th, 3 to 6 p.m. So anyway, that's the information. I had an incredible interaction. I don't know why I feel like I'm going to eat this chocolate here now. I'm sorry, I have to take a little bite. Oh my God. The joy of knowing that it's so easy for me to talk in terms of painting that I paint, that I painted, that I will be painting, to be able to tell you a story according to beginning and getting involved and concluding. Painting a painting really at the end of the day allows you to open up in such a way that you realize you really need to physically condition your body to take all this goodness that's happening on the behalf of it. Amazing. So, I channel it through it, and then on its own behalf, it will channel itself. And there was the formation of a reality that is kind of parallel to the one that is familiar to us. It's just a thin line, almost like a mm, uh, like a tartar, like really finely shaved and just serving as a reminder, but yet at the same token, presenting itself as an entity of its own. And in the world of expression, i.e., the okay, what is that? Let me just see what he's trying to say. Give me. Okay, so on the behalf of goodness of people, you can feel that people doing things that make your life easier, and you feel kind of happier and lighter about living life and being and functioning. Because sometimes it can get so overwhelming, not overwhelming, complicated. Then you realize who's responsible for all this complication, and you realize that it's yourself, and you realize that it's really fixable. Therefore, because you know yourself well enough to know that you can only not tell the truth to yourself that much, and before it really slows down and demands explanations, and then you realize that the longer you pause, the slower the vehicle is driving until you get to a dead stop, and unless it gets in its answers on time. So filtering it through painting, for example, there's a painting that I started by trying to clean my brush really thoroughly, and it had this pink and orange in it, but it was yearning for a yellow. So I had just that bit of that amount, so I needed to clean the surface. I took the canvas and I started cleaning that brush, and I realized that that yellow that it was calling for actually came in handy because I ran out of that formula. So I introduced the yellow into it, and it was kind of semi-drying already. So it reacted in a way that I kind of anticipated, but there's always something new. Look at these colors. There's always something new because you find out that you're under control really all the time. I mean, if you're going to leave it alone at any given point, that's the way it's going to remain. It's not going to change much. It's not going to change at all. So whatever it is that you decide, it's pretty much the finality that you provided with, and you can start it sooner or later, and you can finish it here and there and anywhere and everywhere. And then this finality has carries so much power. But that's at a later point. So you clean that brush and then you introduce the yellow. Then the yellow actually is not the yellow that you're familiar with because it interacts with matter and subject that are not so familiar to it. I mean, the color can feel that level of alienation, alienations, forcefully um, separated, even for just a snap, for a brief second. Plants maybe a gentle trauma, something that won't hurt you, but that can give you a taste of how confusing things can get so fast. But you want to find yourself at that doorstep where the story, you start the story and you tell the story, you were the narrator, and then suddenly you realize that it's just like really on automatic. The machine tells you that it feels secured and it takes it from you, and you don't have to be on the alert, even though you know it's going to come back to you again. But it's all done in a very casual fashion, but yet at the same token, things are being created. Some amazing, fantastic things are being created. Work has been done, mental work, philosophical work, religious work, spiritual work, uh, just just the prose and poetry that's embedded with every rhythmical step that we take or attempt to. So we want to. I say we. I really mean I personally. But we want to get there in a way that we can that we can maybe even if it's briefly, but still enjoy the celebration, the festivities of reaching a point where you say, okay, this fruition is the sign of a new beginning. And then when you say sign of a new beginning, we mean really beginning something new, not a new beginning that you sit and contemplate because you're still at the stages of needing to plan what is it that you exactly do, that you claim that you can do, because you might be able to do it, but not being able to find what it is that will be the it that you are going to do and know that you can. Very confusing, but very reassuring, as it kind of gives you an indication of the location of all the goodies. All the good stuff is really very close and clustered together. So if you do reach that moment of privilege where you're allowed to enter somewhere where you know you're going to be amazed and learn a lot. Um, but yeah, we want to maintain that level of practicality because practicality gets us everywhere. Uh, anyhow, um, and so with that in mind, you realize that cleaning your brush that had some orange and pink residues, switching to the yellow, the first layer is almost semi-dry, and then the third layer, approaching the second layer, when that whole composition is semi-dry, and you want that navy blue to come into the equation, but just kind of take away from the pink by overwhelming it with some kind of blue presence. And so that blue presence, the fourth application, looking at the three other applications semi-dried, deciding to pull it from whichever direction you decide into a location where you really want to start connecting on the early levels of progression. So you take the burgundy because you don't want to rush with your red. You take the burgundy and introduce it and start remembering that first layer of the orange and the pink together, and how it kind of starts getting used to the fact that it is facing a process of great growth, per se growth. The situation becomes beefier, more meaningful, more intriguing, more maybe even challenging, more rewarding, more sophisticated, more with an increased self-awareness, which is like always a good idea and always a good thing. So then at a certain point, because I learned that, I think I learned that myself, being in front of a canvas and thinking about that last poem that I wrote. The day that I wrote it, I felt almost like borderline pathetic, Don't even ask me how I arrived to use the word pathetic, but I just felt like sometimes I've had enough with things that maybe other people would think is really great, and different and genius, and you just really are not taken by the enormity and the deep revelation that supposedly it has to offer. It's like, when you know yourself, you know yourself, and it's just very um, instinctive reactions that are um, sending forth the declaration of how the rest 80% will be like. What weight is it going to carry, and which part of the platform will be uh, um, positioning positioned up, which side of this land it will be a part of. And the the beauty is, I like to work large scale, and I thought about the remarks of great people that worked large. One of them would be Hoffman, of course, Jackson Pollock. You know, uh, and the story that Jackson Pollock said, today was told about Jackson Pollock that they were riding his car over Lee Avenue in East Hampton, and they stopped in front of one of the beautiful mansions with a huge open wide lawn in front of the house. So I don't know who he was with, but he said, "You know what? If I'm going to ride this car through the grass and do the markings that I feel like doing, this person wouldn't know how lucky he would be if I was to do that. It would be my largest creation." He referred to size anyway that he did it, and I think he went to jail for a couple of weeks or something ridiculous like that. But the size, and then I remember an opening in Manhattan about maybe a decade ago, Midtown somewhere, just huge. Yes, huge. It's like 15 feet by 69 feet, like 15, 16 feet by 70 feet, something like that. And then they show you a video of how it was, the stretcher and all this, how it was built, how it was erected, how many people needed. I think that, and then I have a personal reference that the largest piece I single-handedly stretched was 12 by 17. 12 by 17. And I managed to stretch it just good enough to pass, to be okay, acceptable. But that adds to the equation of what it is that's going on in your head and running and circling your mind, and especially when you face the canvas and start painting, and then certain recollections come and demand their time, and then you find out later what color you used and what gesture was taking place, which forces were um, involved, what is the um, preferable order of the day, what kind of action to be taken, whether this or whether that, instead of this or instead of that, in addition to this and in addition to that, and take all this piling up of a kind of enhanced, active, reactive, creative, charged reservoir of energies that really represent who you are and what you're all about. The things you know, the things you don't, and all the things that you're going to find out later, and be surprised. Like dislike, you'll be surprised to say, I didn't see it coming. Once I was playing the djembe with a master, and I'm by far not a master, but I can play the djembe and percussion. When I had this privilege to be with him and play, and I was always recording a video of everything that I did, everything. So it was a given that in my studio, with this mega maestro from Africa, from Ghana. It was awesome. It was unbelievable. I remember when I played, I felt so infuriated inside me that I needed to start changing my style and start playing like I would playing fusion on the drum set, like an acoustic drum set. I took my two hands and I tried to translate it into my freedom and understanding and zone of comfort on the set, playing fusion, playing alternative, playing some modern, almost like borderline jazz rock. So then later when we watched it, this master, this wonderful musician, said, "I can't believe what I'm seeing here. I hear you now. I hear what you're playing that I couldn't of while we were playing." And what he's trying to say, you managed to fit so much information that only now I'm realizing. When someone tells you something about a certain thing that you did or created and all this, and you suddenly in your mind, in your head, you get this revelation like, wow, this person just told me that he figured out what this particular thing that I created and presented it to the public is all about, just by his or her um, uh, reference. Yeah. And then you say, yeah, well, that's good. Why is it good? Because I'm being proven that what I do is something that people can understand, though it might be maybe a little difficult. And it's the classic aspect of low tolerance for standing for 5 minutes without moving, kind of thing. Uh, I can only tell you about myself. I remember when I first kind of got acquainted with Jackson Pollock. It was late in life, really late in life, almost after I created my own first drip and splatter, whatever it is, that I tried to follow some instincts that telling me go there, do this. And then when I introduced myself to Jackson Pollock's work, it was like a shock. It was like an awness that is pleasant. I felt that there's a lot of things that I will examine, that I need to examine and look very closely. Now, this desire to look closely didn't come because I needed that moment to do it in order to understand other things, like I needed it right there, right then, but rather a genuine desire to figure out, because knowing that there is a way that can be figured out in order to people like myself be benefit from it and say, okay, I'm going to the studio and I already know 2-3 things that I shouldn't do anymore, and 2-3 things that I should highly recommend it, that I should add and start adapting it. So first, the images that I examined of Jackson Pollock was like a nightmare, but not because his work was nightmarish, but because the style was of such that is causing illusion, but yet very methodic, and you want to resist that illusion in order to be as clearly and clarify your path as much as possible in order to try to get something out of it, because it comes and goes, and doesn't always comes back so fast and so often. But later on, I relaxed more, so I was actually examining it and trying to understand technically what took place here. How does one arrive to this? Not how did he do it? How did he arrive where he did, and let it be? So now I'm examining whatever I'm examining now vis-a-vis the visual is something that he allowed to become final. This finality is what I have to use in order to fit in. And I did that. And to tell you that I haven't learned a thing or two from him, that would be like a lie. I'm telling you, I, in the most quiet way, in the most intimate, quiet, keeping to myself way, learned things that were like explosions. It was unbelievable. And it was only about placement. It was only about between the eight to a dozen colors. What kind of repetition and what is the logic behind repetition? You realize that you're finding out what that logic is after the awareness of the executor, for that, for lack of a better word, is um, uh, his action or her action creating an an, an automatic rhythm that kind of suddenly becomes kind of loopish a little bit, like a loop, but it's not a loop, but because it comes in and out, but it gives you those crucial seconds of a sense of being in loop, and also teaching you in more ways than one why it's actually an advantage and a good thing to be kind of suddenly driven into a loop, almost like a vortex or current that takes you under, but not quite. And also, something about getting out of a current, but still, it's like crucial because it can be dangerous, it can hurt you, but in the same token, it does not give you the sense that it will leave you helpless. That's an incredible feeling to be able to look and go through this process and build up your stamina. People have zero tolerance to certain things. When it comes to art, having zero tolerance, that's not a good idea. That's not how the society and human beings and people and cultures benefit from the fact that individuals around the world make it their business to create, to put one and one together, to make this application, to do whatever. But just take the time and clean yourself, and without being so holistic, even though you might end up being more holistic than you would ever imagine, you would kind of pursue. So I immediately, I remember I watched the video of, I think it was Hoffman. He was on an 8-foot ladder. Until that time, I thought that I'm actually creating large canvases. I think my largest was like 4.5 feet by 13 feet, something like that. 5 by 13, okay? And suddenly I see this middle-aged man. If I wasn't to know that he's one of the most influential painters, I would think he's a friggin' somebody walking around, maybe retired and doing nothing. So he's on this ladder and he paints black over the canvas, probably creating one of his pieces that the a breakthrough or something incredible and also valuable. Who knows, 50 to 100 to 120 million dollars. So he's on the ladder, and I don't, for the life of me, don't even ask me. It was like such a video that was taken in the 50s, in the late 40s, whatever, and he was actually speaking to the mic, but he wasn't speaking to the mic. You could hear him anyway. He's there, and all he does is those shapes of black that are on the canvas. He's just like in the midst of filling in those shapes that he's supposed to. And I looked at him many, many times at that particular footage because I wanted to understand, what is it that I need, that I must, that I should, that I have to learn from this. This is one of the greatest. He's on a ladder with a brush, applying black paint onto a canvas over and over again. It's not about the shape. It's not about the outcome. It's about any square inch, any and every square inch of black. If the brush went like this and like this and like this and like this, And if you're just like thinking about this and then stopping and and then and then things like that. So I wanted to understand which direction, what is it, what was the last stroke within that square inch. And then, of course, you don't dwell too much because it's an inch and an inch and an inch and an inch. And if it's like 6 to 10 inches, then there's the stroke, the last stroke within that square. And I had a point of reference of in my photographic memory, seeing him on an 8-foot ladder because I really saw it while he was doing it. So it was super helpful. It's like Mother Nature tells me, go ahead, baby. I mean, enjoy it. You're talking about major revelations. The little bit that those incredible people left behind, and the gesture and the willingness to make something that they can speak into a mic and you can literally hear them. Who was the other one that of course I should not forget his name, but anyway, I realized that I need to be careful not to go so seriously embedded within it, and then I will find myself dwelling, but I will not find myself dwelling in the early stages of dwelling. I will find myself dwelling when I'm already like wasted from dwelling, not realizing that I shouldn't even go there. Certain things I shouldn't do. Pure energy draining factors that come and kind of grind our immediate whatever is happening just a foot away from us, because in that square, in that major shifting second chakra, so to speak, and because you want to eventually find what it is that is can be implemented and used as something great that has been done and used and utilized by one of the greatest masters, and there are plenty of them, and Google can help you. Believe me, you just need to learn how to ask the right questions. But going back into that, building up your tolerance for attention, especially when it comes to, how about, okay, you going to a, okay, this is my friend Steve Ram. Let's see if we can get him on the air. Hey, Steve.
How are you?
Good. I'm just doing the show now, so it's like you're on the air. So I forgot to ask you, what is it that you want?
A lot of money.
No. Forget about money. Other than money, why are you calling?
Are you on air?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, my greetings to everybody. Peace, harmony, love. And I wanted to do the show with you, but it's too late for today. What day?
Well, I called you already, and cut to the chase. Why are you calling? How much money do you need?
Millions.
Mm-hmm. Why millions?
If you're gonna do it for millions. What are you doing after the show is the question.
Oh boy. Well, I don't know. After the show, I need at least an hour to deflate from the material that I'm interacting and sending forth to the audience out there.
Well, it's now 12. That's 1. So why don't we just get together for a cup of coffee or something around 2 or 2?
I'll give you a call when the show is over, but let me run by the title that I wrote, that I used for your piece, because I did the labels. You ready?
Yeah.
Cool Counting Countess.
Is there more? Generally, a haiku poem lasts a lot longer.
No. Cool. It's one word. Cool Counting Countess.
Okay.
It goes perfectly.
Okay.
Perfect. Beyond perfect.
Okay. How are they doing at LTV about getting you some publicity?
Oh, we're probably yeah, we're good. We're good. We have
Good.
conversations. We plan, and of course, I send you all the information. You send it forth. But why don't you just say a few words, because I need to continue here, and you're kind of not being cooperative here. So tell me, that big piece. I'm going to tell everyone out there that I told them already about the opening on May 13th on a
Right.
Saturday. You can see one of the pieces is the Steve Rams, and it's pretty big. And speaking of size, because I was just talking about large scale before you called.
Right.
So tell me, summarize in 8 sentences or less. What is it about this particular wonderful large scale full of goodies?
It came from a dream, and the only thing that I saw in my dream was the blimp. So when I stretched the canvas, which is pretty large, the first thing I painted and completed was the blimp. So here was this gigantic white canvas with a finished blimp on it, and it's going away from you at a certain angle. And then it just came to me, and I just kept painting first towards the left top corner, and then down, and then across to the right. And it just had a structure of its own. It's beyond me. It just developed, and it has a continuity. The whole thing, the secret behind it with the little red lines is the depth of all the construction, the buildings, everything that's in it, the sky, the windows. You just don't end. It's an infinite.
Where did you paint it? It's such large scale. Where did you paint it?
I painted it I had a studio in Seacliff on the beach. So okay. It was a huge studio. And the interesting part is that the floor slanted way down where the painting was. So there was an illusion in painting it that when I stepped back to look at the painting changed size and became very small very quickly. So standing back to look at it, I thought, this is not a big painting, until you walked up to it and the floor dropped off, and then you suddenly realized that looking to your left and to your right, the painting went a long way in each direction, which didn't faze me. I like painting big. And there's a companion piece to it, which is here. But I think that the concept of that painting is that you become involved in it, and it takes you through all these windows, through all these dimensions, through all these things where you think you're at the end of a certain dimension or plane, and it isn't. It just keeps going. And it's because of the structure and the buildings and the things in it, it's sort of about contemporary life and the unlimited depth that is involved in it.
Yeah, well, with so much space, it's almost like even if you don't mean it, something will give by way of drama and 3D. I mean, I'm not taking away from your ability. I know you're a very capable painter. I wish I would have met you like 35, 40 years ago when I'm at the stage that I am now, not a beginner that needs to be mentored, But I guess I was fermenting through all the, like the 80s and the 90s until I came out in 97.
I think part of the painting is that you sort of do get pleasantly trapped in it, because once you start going through the dimensions and you see the different things, if you look at the top right corner of it, it ties in with the bottom left corner. It ties in with a building that could be interpreted as the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building. This is before the Twin Towers was done. And you get involved in the painting, and it just keeps carrying you around.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that the viewer has to realize, is that you just don't look at it. You have to get into it. And once you get into it and follow the depth, you become involved in the painting.
Yeah, and it doesn't leave you a choice but to become a part of it in order to,
you have to become a part of it.
Before you called, I spoke about increasing your tolerance to standing in front of a painting, giving it a chance, and see how you would, without any expertise, without any titles, find a way to get to the bottom of it, to the heart of it. But that takes some investment of time. I mean, for people to stand in front of one painting for any reason more than like 5 minutes, have you ever seen anyone? Very rarely.
I watch people at an art show, and most people will go over to a painting and they'll look at it and they'll stand there and they'll say, "Oh, that's pretty," or "That's nice," or "I like that," and walk on. This painting requires the viewer to stop and take the time necessary to follow all the levels. That's why the little red lines are in there. They're a guide. They help people.
Yeah.
So that if you're just looking in a window, you think, well, that's all there is. It isn't, because the red line takes you into another dimension.
Okay, stop showing off, okay? Okay?
Okay.
So what? What's the big deal about that red? You're making a big deal of it.
It's important.
I don't think you have enough red there. But anyway.
Just the right amount.
Say what?
Not too little, not too much.
Yes. What about the purple that you promised? I don't see it there.
It's in a new painting.
No, but it's there. Actually, I found it. I erased it.
Back in time.
I erased it. I kind of blended it with the background.
Oh, okay. I don't think I used purple in that painting. I don't use purple very much.
No, I know that about you. That's why I said, what's up with it?
However, in the abstract that I have here, there is purple.
Yes. Oh, the one that you showed at LTV, yes.
Yes, there is purple.
Yes, correct.
So I'm looking forward to the show. And
good. Yeah, but
I always like your shows.
Yeah, but also listen. Send forth the invite in the poster. Do it. Or for the show, for the opening.
I don't have a computer anymore. Is the problem?
But you have a phone. I texted it to you.
Yeah. I'll take a look on the phone and see if I got something from you. My phone is.
What do you mean take? You don't. That means all the things I send you, you don't even pay attention.
I do. I always look. Anything I get from you, I always look.
Well, I never got one confirmation from you, and I send you lots of stuff ever. That means for me.
Well, I have to go to East Hampton today. That's why I'd like to meet you. I have to go to East Hampton later today to switch phones again, and maybe we can get together in East Hampton someplace, and I'll combine the phone store and meeting with you a little later. That would be very nice.
Okay, good. So listen, really nice to have you on the air. That's Steve Raum, guys, and he's actually a very a friend of this show, the Hello Hello show, and also a great artist and also a participating artist in this upcoming show here at LTV. But I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
I wouldn't hold my breath if I were you.
I'll call you.
Okay, big hugs. Bye.
Okay, take care. Goodbye.
Okay. Okay, so that was Steve Raum, and it's funny we should be called exactly when I'm talking about the increasing of your tolerance when it comes to examining art, deciphering art, appreciating art, figuring what it is that's in front of you, giving the time, the appreciation, the respect, and the sharp eye and the clarity of the mind. So much involved in that. Also, I need to. One sec. Okay. $20. Very good. So yeah, it's interesting that he should call exactly when I was talking about the examining the masters, that we live in a day and age where we can really see footage of masters. So I examined And like when when you go between Hoffman and de Kooning and Jackson Pollock, uh, you know, any any show at any museum in New York City, and the pieces there, right? Actually, not too long ago, I went and I saw one. It's not the honest, oh, how big it is or what. It's just the control of the being able to create such large space and give the attention as a whole to the canvas, but also in a very unique way. That's what makes them the masters and the great painters that they are. Uh, is that they can create also focal areas, focal points where it, it each square can stand on its own behalf, fully trusting the contents within that square. Even if you just keep those kind of odd looking shapes that are filled with all the information and the rhythm and the velocity and the intent, and all the pluses and minuses, all the blending and the refusing, the pushing away, so much. So I got to a point where I could adapt certain understandings, because from the work that I used to do and still do, you create some kind of a privilege to enter a world like this and be accepted to skip a few stages and find yourself already in where the action is. So I managed to kind of get something firm from each observation, and using the tools of technology and computers and whatever, you can get your hands on some magical stuff. Magical stuff. So what is it? So let's say that we're successful in understanding. Let's say that we have a continuous moments of breakthroughs and feeling of exhilaration and meaningfulness, results, progress, elevation. Really good stuff is happening. So what? So let's just say that this is in place. Then so how do you transform and make the adaptation? Language, uh, customs, habits. What's the composition of the values that govern your life in the community, in the society that you live in? How is it being needing to figure out what shape it is? So that's our job. Like, that's our job to come up with what we think. Oh yeah, you don't see the seams, but you figure out this is where it was added, and therefore it lives into the straight line. So it's got to be this way, that the other one. And then there's a whole reality where you need to figure out which one was put first, because not all of them are overlapping, so you can't really tell. They kind of put one next to the other. And you say, what's the indication? What is it that gives me the indication that he came or she came from here to there, from there to here, or maybe both at the same time? It doesn't seem like it's important, but believe me, it is very important. In my book, it's important. In my book is the difference between um, um, crawling or speeding, running, and it matters. It matters. You want to be in your studio, not only realize that you're prolific and inspired, capable, and doing. You want to just believe also that you did the best that you can to clear a lot of crap from your way and obstacles from your way, and be preemptive in order to conserve energy and conserve the strength, and understand that this is precious. Certain things, when you use them, you cannot refill, you cannot regain, you cannot, you cannot. You know what I mean? So the EDFs, the energy draining factors, they're crucial. So when you understand that and you start becoming aware, even if you cannot prevent certain things from entering, from taking place, at least you're aware that it's happening, and you're also aware of each time the little bit that you manage to achieve or to put aside or to do as you wish that to as you wish to do, and be happy with the results, because that's what you plan, and that's what's really a so. So all I'm saying is that when I have conversations with people, I can tell immediately when people are just have zero tolerance for certain things. It doesn't make them stupid, God forbid, or incompetent or whatever. But so I can have a conversation with people and say, well, you know what, I can tell you of the reason why you feel this way or why things happen in the way you just described. It's because you have zero tolerance. And that zero tolerance prevents you from going closer to, if it's a painting, it's a painting. Going closer into a painting with an open mind, trying to figure out basic stuff, skeleton. And then from there, if you manage to do that basic stuff and really, genuinely, you wouldn't be telling me the things that you're telling me. But then you want to tell people certain things, but you don't tell them because you know that there's no just straightforward way to tell people things. That like saying, okay, listen, I think I have a few things that I know better than you for your own sake. So here it is, ABC 1, 2, 3, and then the other person will look at you and say, "Can I thank you? But you need to change your attitude." And then you don't know what he means or she means by way of attitude, because you don't feel like you have any attitude other than just wanting and willing to share. But then you realize, yeah, people are sensitive. Even though you give them and you think that they should be thankful, which probably they will or they are, but they're just vulnerable and they're exposed and they're sensitive. And maybe that you didn't take into the equation under consideration enough to maybe enhance your level of tolerance, telling them in sensitivity, understanding towards their sensitivity, being sensitive and mindful of their sensitivity and their vulnerability. Really, that base. So, and that in itself is also another kind of breakthrough for you as an artist. If you're an artist, that's a breakthrough. Understanding that you did not quite do for others as much as you should have, as much as you expecting from others, and indeed getting from others. And so, if you realize that, and you're the person that I think you are, then of course you're going to do something about it immediately, and then that's it. You're balancing things out. At the end of the day, all these things that you think that a lot of kind of spiritual powers took place and energies were exploding, intertwining, and all this, actually nothing, or maybe 3% of that happened. It was just more like opening up, anchoring, widening, floating, creating that, you know, and then gently becoming the entity in that space, and just being able to find your way in and out in ways that suits you every time, even if every time is a different location. You're in good hands when you find yourself residing in in the structure that you actually first you put yourself together yourself. And so you're already landing into the familiarity of the strange. You find it so familiar, residing inside that new strange thing that suddenly appeared in your life, even though it's the thing that you have created, but it's new, but it's not you because you're familiar with it, because you spent all that process of putting it together, which is counted, and you can count it as a part of creation, creativity, effort, desire to cope. You know, um, the willingness to cope with that desire. That willingness becomes big and meaningful. Yeah, are you willing? Are you willing? Willingness to cope So that's the willingness for the sake of the desire, man, taking place. That's awesome. That's awesome. So quickly enough, you realize that you're actually pretty good to go. Like, you find like you're comfortable enough and you're happy with what you see, and then you proceed and you kind of keep that, maintain the achievement by locking in from both ends and keeping that the track itself like somewhat sturdy, so you know at least for the next 100 miles you're good. No, let's not exaggerate. Let's not say for 10 years. No, just next 100 miles, and you're there. Miracles will take place, and we need miracles. Even if we're just like on top of the world, we need miracles in order to somehow bring it all together. So we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday, and as much as we're here this morning, wonderful morning of May 2nd, year 2023, on a Tuesday morning, here with the Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi. Um, Sending you our blessing and love and recognition for your effort that you put in bringing and elevating the concept of public access here at the East End of Long Island, as we have it so available and readily available, LTV. Keep up the good spirits and check out all of our art exhibitions and so much that you can find out about LTV. God bless. See you soon.